what I want to do now is set a stage for our opener. I want you to get to know a good friend of mine, Nathan Osmond. Nathan, the things he cares most about. When I said, tell me what matters most to you. And this tells you just a little bit about him. He said, it's my relationships. It's my relationships with my Creator. It's my relationships with my spouse, and my relationships with my kids. I said, oh, okay, tell me a little bit more. Like, tell me the things that you most hope to achieve in life. And he was like, well, I want to build those relationships, but I also want to leave an impact on the world if I can, to help everyone discover their own greatness and to really live up to that potential. And he doesn't just say it. It's not just a nice little thing. He's been doing this for years. So he's sung his whole life. He comes from a very musical family. He's sung his whole life and performed on stage and things. But was it 2003? 2003, he got called up last minute to get up on stage. And so he was on stage to present. First time he ever had to put together a presentation. It was with Tony Robbins, who has a few people who watch and listen to him. And I think that year he had to present across some 100 and something other stages. And just running across the country, presenting, sharing, and trying to inspire. And then when I asked him, I said, what is leadership to you? And he quoted from John C. Maxwell, who had awarded him the Leadership Award of the Year 2 years running for the arts and entertainment. John said to him, in one word, he said, it's influence. And that's the one that he's really grabbed onto. And so I want you guys to welcome in Nathan Osmond. We're so delighted to have you on.
Thank you, David. How we feeling? Welcome to Utah. Good to see you guys. You came from England? Oh, my heck. Hey, I'm going to give you some country music because I don't know if they got country over there, but I want you to take that to London and let them hear it, okay? I had Lone Star produce half that album. You guys, I'm a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll. I'm an Osmond. So anyways, just a little background. The number one question I'm asked as an Osmond is, who's your daddy? All right? So just get it out of the way. My father's Alan Osmond. He's the one on the left side there. Those are the dance moves. I grew up on the set of the Donnie Marie show watching those guys perform. So my brothers and I, of course, you like to mimic your parents, right? So we started a boy band. I used to tour with New Kids on the Block, Color Me Bad, Salt and Pepper, Naughty by Nature, all those groups, right? A lot of fun in the 90s. But then my wife says, you look like a country artist. So this is a little snapshot of what my life looks like right now. We have a lot of fun singing and performing. But you know what? I also am a podcaster. You guys listen to podcasts? You like podcasts or radio shows? It's actually on Brushwood Media Network, so we're on 12:30 and 4:30 Eastern every single day. I love to inspire people. Look, this is the most important thing. I told him I was going to put my greatest accomplishment on the screen, and here it is. Let's go ahead and unmute that right now. This is my family. I'm the proud father of 4 sons. We'll turn it down just a hair. This is my wife. She was cast as Snow White at Disney World, so I tell everybody I married Snow White. We got 4 dwarfs right there, all boys. With that, I come from a family of 8 boys. There's 57 grandkids on the Osmond side. Only 17 are girls, and several of them were adopted. So we literally have to adopt to get girls in the family. But the Osmond name's going to be around for a long time. And this is what gets me up every single morning. This is my why. This is my drive. This is what I have worked on for years. He'll be 21 here soon. So life goes by fast. There's a great country song that says, don't blink. Life will pass by. I hope that here at this conference, you guys get your money's worth. A lot of you guys have invested a lot of money to be here. You've flown in from London. You've flown in from lots of different places. I know you're going to get your money's worth. But more importantly, I hope you get your time's worth. Because time is your greatest commodity, and time is short. You know what? That's what Helen Keller said. Life is short and unpredictable. Eat the dessert first. We're going to have a sweet time here during these next 20 minutes. I got a lot to cover, so let's go flying. Guys, I got to ask the question, why are we here today? We're here today to up our game. Right? The most important thing here is leadership. This is a leadership conference. So I told you about John C. Maxwell. I won that leadership award. He had me put this video together, asked me, what is leadership? And he summed it up, just like David said. He said, leadership is influence. Let me ask you a question. Are you a leader? Are you influencing people for good or for bad? Yes. Whether you want to or not, we are all influencers. Tell that to your kids. You're an influencer. Isn't that awesome? But the point is you got to step into that role. I love what this man said, Earl Nightingale. He says this, that he created this little thing called The Strangest Secret. It was a gold record. And on this, he says this, you become what you think about most of the time. I love that. Are there any parents here in the room? Good. Greatest role you'll ever have. But look, Og Mandino wrote another book called The Greatest Secret in the World. He says the same thing. Rhonda Byrne wrote The Secret, right? Remember that? She says the same thing. But one of my favorite books says, as a man thinketh, so is he, or so shall he be. And that book's been out a long time. So there's your secret. So my question is, what are you thinking about? You ever heard that book, Think and Grow Rich? Napoleon Hill? If you read past the front cover, you've missed it. That secret's right there on the front cover. We got to think. And we become what we think about. What we focus on expands. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I love that book. That's one you should add to your list. But this guy, Jim Rohn, said this too, that you become the average sum of the 5 people with whom you associate. If you hang around 5 broke people, I guarantee you'll be number 6. If you hang around 5 negative people, you'll be number 6. I guarantee that. So be selective, my father always says. Choose your friends. Don't let your friends choose you. Love everybody. But be careful with where you spend your time, because there's this much of it, right? You got to take care of that time. But the thing is, at what age does this become irrelevant, who you hang out with? 18, 21? For those parents that raise your hands, I guarantee you're concerned about the types of kids your kids hang out with. And why is that? In most cases, they become just like them. Look at the people that you're surrounding yourself with here at this conference. That's why we showed up. We're going to elevate ourselves as we surround ourselves with greatness. That's what I want to do here is just help you to understand that what we do matters, and just be selective with whom you hang out here. Maximize your time at this conference. You came here for a reason. We're going to up our game. These are my coaches right here, Alan and Suzanne Osmond. My father was hit with something called multiple sclerosis when I was 10 years old. You know, it was hard. It was hard to watch your dad struggle. But from day one, he says this, I might have MS, but MS does not have me. And that's been his slogan from day one. He's helped people get out of their wheelchairs because of his attitude. He went on Larry King's show, and he says to Larry, it's not the disease that gets you. It's the lack of hope. If you don't have hope, you can't have faith. When people lose hope, that's when neighborhoods turn into hoods. You got to keep hope alive. Repeat after me, it's possible. Yeah, if you don't have that belief first, you're not going to make it. So believe that it's all possible. My father, there's all 8 boys right there. A lot of boys in our family. You know what? He's one of my heroes, and he helped me out one time. I'm going to tell you what my leader did for me. See, my father was a black belt trained by Chuck Norris, sold over 100 million records. Right? He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most firecrackers lit off at one time. Isn't that awesome? That's my dad. I love that. But you know what? We were on Good Morning America when I was 9 years old. This is me right here, the little chubby kid with the perfect hairdo. And you know what? I didn't want to say a word on that show. It was like early in New York City. I'm from Utah. It was dark and early. And Joan London singled me out. She says, so Nathan, do you enjoy this entertainment business? And guess who froze on national television? This guy. I said 2 words. Yes, ma'am. That's it. That's all that came out of my mouth. Anyways, my father said I wasn't going to say another word, so he stepped in, saved the interview. And on the way out of that studio that day, he says to me, Nathan, it's a talk show. Talk. People want to hear what you have to say. And on one hand, I was humiliated. I felt I'd let my family down on national television. But on the other hand, my hero, one man, changed this guy's life. People want to hear what you have to say. So he coached me. I got coaching. Repeat after me. You need coaching. Because you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know I was going to be in front of a big group of leaders someday teaching you guys this stuff. But he says, people want to hear what you have to say. So he worked with me. He coached me. He says, it's television. Do something visual. We're going on Regis and Kathy Lee next. They're not here to interview me. They're here to interview you. So, Nathan, I want 2 answers coming out of your face. I like it because, you see what I'm saying? And I became vocal. Now they can't get me to shut up now. The thing is that you become what you think about most of the time. But I love this quote right here. It says, treat a man the way that he is, and he only becomes worse. But treat a man the way that he could be, then he becomes what he should be. I love that quote. My father saw greatness, and he helped me to step into it. And that's what I like doing with my podcast. This is my grandma. Talk about a leader. Talk about an influencer. This lady right here was born with 2 deaf children right there. She was told that her children would be raised in an institution. No, these are my kids. I'll teach them. I'm an English major, and I'm going to insist that they learn to speak, and they did. She taught them saxophone. And guess what? The doctors told her to not have any more kids. I'm glad she didn't listen because my dad came next. You'd have a completely different speaker here today. But you know what, my father, he stepped in because he was the oldest that could hear. They had 9 children altogether. There they are, the Osmonds right there. Went on to do great things. But Grandma wanted to make a difference. She wanted to be a leader. She wanted to influence children that had deafness. So she started a foundation called Osmond Foundation for Children of the World. Isn't that great? But then these guys came to our door, and they helped change that focus with Grandma. She says, you know what, how can we pass up any child? Have you guys ever seen this balloon right here? The Children's Miracle Network. You've probably been to Costco's, you've been to Walmart's, right? You know what? My grandmother changed that focus, and she renamed it from Osmond Foundation for Children of the World and turned it into Children's Miracle Network. Up to this date, Grandma, a little girl born in Idaho in a 2-bedroom cabin, has helped to raise over $9 billion for children in hospitals. That's my grandma's legacy. Isn't that awesome? But you know what she said on her deathbed? She didn't say it, she wrote it because she couldn't talk. She had a stroke. And you know what? She was laying there. She came out of a coma and tapped my father on the hand. He was so excited to see her awake. And she was pointing to the pen and the paper. She says, Alan, she's trying to get his attention. She wrote something down. These are words to live by. She says, Alan, there is no limit to the good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. As owners, as leaders, as executives, we are in a power position to be able to influence so many. And the good that you can do is unlimited if you don't care who gets the credit. You've already got your titles. Don't worry about titles in this world. If a little girl who you never heard of before can raise $9 billion for children around the world, you can do the same. I love Grandma's influence. She changed the world. And I'm going to show you a guy that also changed the world that you probably didn't know about. A lot of us have never heard this man's name before, and yet he made one move one day that changed the whole world. He changed this country. It looks the way that it looks like today because of this guy, and we don't even know who he is. You know, he was a professor of rhetoric, and he was put in a really hard position. He was placed on the top of a hill called Little Round Top during the Civil War with these guys, the men of the 20th Maine. I'm a good friend with Andy Andrews. He's my coach. He told me I could share this story with you guys today. And you know what? I love this story because he was told on July 2nd, 1863, at all hazards, Joshua, don't you let the South come up from Devil's Den there, because if they take the high ground, they will wipe us out in that little town over there called Gettysburg. And guess what? Sure like he said, right there was a far left edge of 80 men. And at 2:30 p.m. that day, the 15th and the 47th Alabama, they attacked, and they attacked with vengeance. They had that rebel yell that just had your blood run cold. And as they got closer, they were able to push them back. A lot of men died, falling up there at their side, black powder flying everywhere. And they came up again on the second charge. They pushed them back. Came up a third charge. They came over the wall that they had built. Now they're over the wall. Black smoke flying, bayonets flying. And miraculously, they were able to push him back. On the fourth charge, Chamberlain took belt buckle. He thought he was a dead man, knocked the wind out of him. They're over the wall again, even further. It's almost a block top. But somehow, some way, these men were able to push him back over the wall. Now they're down to 80 men with no bullets. Just gather the bullets from the dead. We've already done that, so we're out. 80 men. What are we going to do? Right? Sergeant Kosher comes over. Should I sound the retreat? He says, no. Fix the bayonet. I'm fixing the bayonet. All right? And they said, what do we do? His brother comes over. Do we sound the retreat? He says, tell your brother James you keep his head down. With 3 of us up on this hill, it could be a bad day for Mom. 3 brothers on that. Well, guess what? A little 12-year-old boy climbing the tree. Coming back up! They're coming back up! What do we do? He says, exercise a great right wheel. What's a great right wheel? He says, the colonel intends to charge. And before they could talk him out of it, he drew his sword, threw it downhill, and said, charge! Charge! And 80 men with no bullets held over 400 of the South at gunpoint. They said, no way could this be the same army that we've been fighting. They have to have been reinforced. One man made one move one day. In fact, one guy was holding 20 guys at a rifle point by a tree. Joshua comes walking over by him. He says, sir, I have no bullets. And he says, well, don't tell them that. How many guys have ever felt like you're out of ammo? Yeah, in your businesses? You ever feel overwhelmed, like you're going to die? That's what these guys felt like. But you know what? They took action, and because they did this, historians that are a lot smarter than I am have said this: if he had not done that, the South would have won at Gettysburg, and it would have turned the whole change of the country. We would not look like we are right now. We'd look like a patchwork, like Europe. We'd have the country of Texas, the country of Virginia. We would not have had the same military power that we had in the 40s to fight 2 wars on 2 sides. But because one professor of rhetoric made one move on one day, we are the United States of America. Isn't that an awesome story? I love that story. But you know what? The story continues. You see, he became the governor of Maine, and on one day he got this letter across his desk years later, and it says this: "Dear sir, I want to tell you of a little passage in the Battle of Little Round Top, Gettysburg, concerning you and me, which I am now glad of. Twice in that fight I had your life in my hands. I got a safe place between 2 rocks and drew bead fair and square on you. You were standing in the open behind the center of your line, full exposed. I know your rank by your uniform and actions, and I thought it a mighty good thing to put you out of the way. I rested my gun on the rock and took steady aim. I started to pull the trigger, but some strange notion stopped me. Then I got ashamed of my weakness, and I went through the same emotions again. I had you, practically certain. But that same strange something shut right down on me. I couldn't pull the trigger and gave it up. That is your life. I am glad of it now and hope you are. Yours truly, a member of the 15th Alabama." One of my favorite books is "Thy Days Are Known, and Thy Years Shall Not Be Numbered Less." If you guys woke up here today in Park City, Utah, 6 feet above ground, it's because you're supposed to be here. Your greatest moments of your life have yet to be lived. The businesses that you're supposed to start and succeed in, the lives you're going to change are unbelievable. And I got to tell you this, your time is not up. This is halftime. Aren't you grateful for Gipper speeches? Aren't you grateful we're in the locker room right now? We got a game to win out there. So I'm going to share one thing that I'm going to prove that we can make a difference, that what we do matters. I got this title for my talk off a little magnet I bought at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. What we do matters. You see how one guy in the 40s could change the world for bad? You know, I don't even want to quote him, but you know what? He had a weird mustache. He wasn't even a German, but he led that country down a bad path. And he says, "What luck for leaders that men do not think," close quote. Think about those words for a minute. We can have influence for good or for bad, but what we do matters. In fact, you know what? Have you ever read this book or seen that movie? Don't bother with the movie. Read the book. But this book changed my life. And you know what, Andy, I asked him if I could share this because I call this butterfly effect the George Bailey effect. You'll see why in just a quick second because I got about 10 minutes left. And you know what? I wish I had all day to share these stories, but this one changed my life. You see, Andy was ironing a shirt in a hotel room when he told me this. He says, "I was ironing this blue shirt, and it was getting ready for my presentation the next day, and in the next room, Peter Jennings and his Person of the Week was on the television. He could hear it, and he was listening intently. The Person of the Week for this week is Norman Borlaug." Norman Borlaug, right? And I'm going to tell you who Norman Borlaug was, but how many of you guys ever heard of the butterfly effect? You guys ever heard of this? You know what? It was a doctoral thesis in 1963. Edward Lorenz, he was at New York Academy of Sciences, and he says, you know, I think butterflies can change the world. They can flap their little butterfly wings on the other side of the world, which will move air molecules, which then move more air molecules, and I think it could create a hurricane once it gets to the other side of the world. It was ridiculous. It was laughed out of the New York Academy of Sciences, but it was interesting, so it hung around long enough for them to do more research on it. And after further research, these scientists found that it's viable, it's legit, and it works every single time. Just like the law of gravity, they gave it the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. That's what the butterfly effect is. So back to Norman Borlaug, this guy is now being recognized for saving the lives of over 2 billion people and counting. He had hybridized a certain type of corn and wheat that could be planted in like the plains of Siberia and arid countries, South Africa, South America, and he's being credited on television at 91 years old for saving the lives of over 2 billion people and counting. But this angered Andy because he told me, Nathan, I knew it wasn't Norman Borlaug that saved the lives of 2 billion people. He says it was the Vice President, Henry Wallace, under Roosevelt. Now, history buffs are going, I thought Truman was his vice president. Yeah, you're right, but he had more than one. And his very first vice president was a guy named Henry Wallace. And while Henry Wallace had the position of the vice president of the United States of America, he used that power to go down to Mexico, open a post for the sole purpose of hybridizing corn and wheat, and he hired a young Norman Borlaug to run that post. So if you really stop and think about it, shouldn't the person of the week be the vice president, Henry Wallace? I think so. Unless, maybe, just maybe, it was this guy, George Washington Carver. You guys like peanut butter? You like barbecue sauce? This guy created more creations out of the peanut alone and the sweet potato. Guys, this guy was incredible, but when he was a young student at Iowa State University, he had a dairy sciences professor that allowed him to go out on Saturdays and Sundays on these botanical expeditions, and he sent his little 10-year-old son with him. And while he's flapping his butterfly wings on peanuts and sweet potatoes and on that victory garden back here that fed half the United States during World War II, when no one was looking, he's flapping his butterfly wings into the heart of a young Henry Wallace, showing him what plants can do and the lives they can save. So I'm thinking Carver for Person of the Week, aren't you? Unless, maybe, just maybe, it was the farmer from Diamond, Missouri, Moses and Susan. They lived in a slave state, but they didn't believe in slavery, which caused problems with radicals like these Quantrill's raiders that would come in, who would shoot people and burn barns and steal horses. And one day they came on their farm, and they did the exact same thing. They shot people, they stole horses, they burned their barn down, and then they stole this lady because she refused to give up her little infant baby boy. Her name was Mary. Well, Susan and Mary were like best friends, and this was just awful. So Moses did something. He took action. He put a poster in this business over here, an inquiry over here, and 3 days later, in the middle of a January night in a crossroads in Kansas, Moses was able to put together a meeting with an offshoot group of Quantrill's raiders. In the middle of the night, they come riding up on their horses with those burlap sacks and the holes cut out for their eyes. And Moses traded his only horse for what they threw to him in a bag. And they rode off in the night. Well, Moses gets down on his hands and his knees, and he opens up that bag, and he pulls out this frozen, almost dead baby boy. And he unbuttoned his shirt, and he stuffed that baby in next to his warm skin, talking to that baby. He walked that baby out saying, I'm going to raise you as my own, because he knew that Mary had already been killed. And this is how Moses and Susan Carver came to raise that little boy, George Washington. So if you really stop and think about it, wasn't it the farmer from Diamond, Missouri that saved the lives of over 2 billion people and counting? Unless, and that's the point, isn't it? Who knows who it was that made that one move, that one day, that changed the lives of over 2 billion people and counting? And who knows who it is in your lives that you're going to affect and you're going to influence with your butterfly wings. We have the power of one. One person can change the whole world. Look at that accident I sat in today. One person made one mistake that changed the lives of millions of people. No, that was just Park City Canyon. You know how many people were late to work and how many people were affected by one person's decision? Think about that. It works every single time. Just like when George Bailey wished that he had never been born. Remember that? And the angel gives him that opportunity to see what his life would have looked like. He would not have been there to save his brother who fell on the ice. And think of all the soldiers that drowned because of that. Right? The guy, he wasn't there to stop putting the poison in the pills. You see, remember, that film changed my life. It's my dad's favorite film. It is a wonderful life. And it can be and it will be, but we have a responsibility, especially in positions of leadership, to step into our greatness and inspire others to do the same. I love this. Well, I want to show you one last picture right here. This is something that changed my life too. See, oftentimes in business, we think we work for a company, a supervisor, we work for a boss or a logo or a slogan. Baloney. This billboard says it all. The people you work for are waiting for you at home. That why is so important. If I can add one more book to your list, it's this, Man's Search for Meaning. Dr. Viktor Frankl. This man had his entire life's work in his briefcase when he was hauled off by Nazi soldiers with his family and put on a train. When he got off that train, they ripped his briefcase, his life's work, and they burned it in a fire right in front of him. I interviewed his grandson on my podcast. And you know what? It's incredible to hear his stories. But as he watched his life's work go up in smoke and saw his wife ripped from his hands and his in-laws who were all killed, he even said that his nightmares were greater than his reality. He loved going to sleep to have those nightmares. They were better than his reality. He survived not one, but 3 Nazi death camps. But you know what? He had to see himself beyond those barbed wires, beyond those towers with those machine guns. He had to see himself after the war, recreating and rebuilding and taking that message that burned up in smoke to the world, and he did exactly that. It's what kept him alive. In his first chapter, he says this: don't aim at success, for success like happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it can only do so as an unintended side effect to one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself. And that's fancy talk, Dr. Frankel, so simplify it for me. He does. In the next breath, he writes this: if you know your why, you can endure almost any how. How is none of your business. That's David's business. That's why you paid to be here. He's going to show you how to be successful as leaders, how to step into your greatness and inspire others to do the same. But you know what? I've always learned this. Les Brown was a good friend of mine, still is. He's my mentor when it comes to speaking. You become who you hang around. And you know what he said to me, Nathan? If you want something bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up your time, your peace, and sleep for it, if all that you dream of and scheme of is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, and you gladly sweat for it, and fret for it, and plan for it, and lose all your terror of the opposition for it, and if you simply go after that thing that you want with all of your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold famine, poverty, or gout, sickness and pain of both body and brain can keep you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you besiege and beset it, with the help of God, you'll get it. You know why? I'll sum it up with these 5 words. You were born to shine. God doesn't make junk, and you're not junk. You're His. Don't be proud of who you are. Be proud of whose you are. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be here. And I just want to tell you guys, I'm proud of who you are and of whose you are. But more importantly, I hope that you'll take what you learned here at this conference and you won't keep it to yourselves. I hope you'll share it with your teams, who will then flap their little butterfly wings. And guess what? Together, we'll change the world. What we do matters. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you. I got a free gift for you, by the way. If you guys want to go ahead and text me the word home to that number, I'm going to send you a free song. You guys want a free song? All right, there's your free gift. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate you.